it would be good to start with your famous maxim about what is true in the province of the mind. Could you begin by...
In the province of the mind, what one believes to be true either is true or becomes true within certain limits. These limits are to be found experimentally and experientially. When so found, these limits turn out to be further beliefs to be transcended. In the province of the mind, there are no limits. However, in the province of the body, there are definite limits not to be transcended.
You've probably devoted your whole life, and certainly many decades recently, to pushing to see, what really were the limits.
Right.
Going into new realities, taking on the belief systems of those realities, and then coming back to your basic working reality and challenging those beliefs, integrating those beliefs
Right.
with your own. In your writings, you've explored almost every state of consciousness I could imagine, the various mystical levels of Satori, communication with extraterrestrials, communication with other species. You've established probably a more significant mapping of inner space than almost any other modern person, and I think we all owe a great debt to you for that.
But don't get stuck with those. I've abandoned all of them. It's impossible, because there are infinities within the mind.
I think that's the beauty of your work is that you keep moving further and further and further out. In the center of the Cyclone, you described a state, in fact you had a whole system, virtually a quantitative system for mapping states of consciousness, and you talked about one that I found most fascinating, which you call +3, mega Satori. And in that state, you describe going so far out of your body, and even out of the physical universe, to the point of being at the level of essence in which the physical universe is created.
Right.
That almost seemed to me, in reading that book, like an ultimate state of consciousness, but I know you wrote about it some 15 years ago. How does it look to you now?
Well, there's one state beyond +3. That's +1. But you're not allowed to remember that. Once you go into it, you have union with God. That's the true yoga. And so you're non-human. So there's no way you can recount what happened. You have no way of saying it, because it's beyond language.
Yes.
Well, all those states are beyond language. Language is a very poor instrument to express them.
You've described in some of your other writings language as being a film, a thin film that separates us from reality, really. As much as we try to use language to describe what we mean, it really puts barriers up.
Well, there's one use of language that's valid. That's the injunctive use, telling you how to do things. The descriptive one is very poor. And William James said it. The other realities are separated from this one by the filmiest of screens. And I found that this screen is language. So you have to abandon it when you're going to these other realities.
In addition to +1 and +3, you've mapped out +6.
Right.
That's a state of consciousness, as I recall, in which the mind can travel to any point.
Right.
In physical or non-physical space.
But you maintain your individuality.
That must be a basic mode of a psychic explorer. I gather from reading much of your work that you spent a great deal of time in +6.
Right, and in +12. +12 is the blissful idiot. You're in your body, you're right here and now, but everything is happy. There's gold dust particles in the air, and everything is good.
You can feel energy moving in and out of the different psychic centers of the body.
And if a bird calls, you hear it echoing through the galaxy. But that's not much use, unless you can get another bliss ninny in the same space.
Yeah. In fact, many of the mystical teachings warn against getting stuck in some of these realities.
I haven't been in any of them since that time.
Well, you also refer to, in your mapping of states, I suppose, is +48, which is sort of a perfectly neutral state.
Right. +24 is the professional state. of any discipline that you're involved in, where you're lost in the discipline. 48 is where you're communicating with everybody else. And then there are the minus states, but I don't go into those.
No, but at one point you wrote about the importance of going into the minus states
Right.
and remaining perfectly aware, being conscious in those negative states, not trying to block out the negativity.
Right.
And you described that, as I recall, as burning karma.
Yes. And then there's in the center of the Cyclone, there's a chapter called A Guided Tour of Hell, which was minus 6. And that was awful.